Hi guys, I feel like I see a lot of the same books talked about on social media, and I do it too. Books are obviously popular for a reason and they deserve the hype, but today I wanted to talk about some underrated romances, in my opinion. Obviously, we all have different For You pages and follow different people, so what's underrated to me might not be underrated for you. Maybe you see people talk about them all the time, but these are books that I personally don't see talked about a lot that I think deserve more hype. The first one is How to Honeymoon Alone. The main character in this one calls off her wedding when she finds out that her fiance had been cheating on her, but she still decides to go on their honeymoon just alone because it's like her dream trip. She planned the entire thing and she doesn't want to miss it. And her first night in Barbados, she goes to dinner alone, but this man ends up sitting with her because he doesn't want to wait for a table. And then from there, they just keep running into each other. They're both at the pool at the same time, they both go snorkeling at the same time, that kind of thing. And basically he's also there by himself and he has all these activities planned, so he suggests that she goes with him to all these things and then they don't have to honeymoon alone. It's a bit of a grumpy sunshine. She is a kindergarten teacher and he is this grumpy workaholic lawyer type, and this book was a lot of fun. I really liked seeing them go and do all their little excursions. They like watch sea turtles hatch, they go on this catamaran, midnight swims. I thought the couple had really good chemistry and this is just a perfect summer read. Cute, fast-paced, a little steamy, really good, and I never see anybody talking about it. Okay, the next one is definitely a little debatable, but it's Betting on You by Lynn Painter. Lynn Painter is a very popular romance book author. She wrote Better Than the Movies, but I just feel like this one didn't get the hype that it deserved. I always see people talking about Better Than the Movies, which is valid. I do love Better Than the Movies, but I also really liked Betting on You, and I just feel like it really deserved the Better Than the Movies treatment, and it didn't get that. This is a young adult When Harry Met Sally retelling. They meet on a plane, they end up sitting next to each other, and they don't get along at all, and they don't think they're ever going to see each other again, but then they run into each other at the movie theater a few years later, and then a few years after that they end up being co-workers at this hotel. So again, very Harry Met Sally. And when they start working together at the hotel, they're both going through breakups, and he does the whole thing where he's saying boys and girls can't just be friends, and she's saying that he's wrong, and so from that conversation they become friends. I don't know, if you've seen Harry Met Sally, it's basically the plot of When Harry Met Sally, but they're teenagers, and there's also a little bit of fake dating because both of their parents are divorced. That's another thing that they really like bond over, and the female main character is going away for the weekend with her mom and her new boyfriend, so they're basically trying to sabotage the trip. So she brings him and they fake date for the weekend. She brings him like as her boyfriend, so it's a friends to lovers with a sprinkle of fake dating, and it was just so fun, and I just loved their dynamic in this book. They had great chemistry and banter, and I just really loved them together. And Lynn Painter is just so good at writing YA romances, like that feeling of when you're younger and you think you have a crush on somebody but you're not sure if they like you back, and texting them is all exciting and getting phone calls, and it's just really cute. And I really liked seeing them help each other not only get through their recent breakups but also help each other deal with their parents' divorces. It was just really good and had good character development. If you've read Better Than the Movies and liked it, or any other of Lynn Painter's books, and you haven't picked up this one, would definitely recommend. The next two are interconnected standalones, and it's Fool Me Once and The Boyfriend Candidate by Ashley Winstead. The female main characters in these are sisters, and the first one, Fool Me Once, is a second chance romance. They dated in college and had a really messy breakup, and now they both work in politics. He works for the governor, I believe, and she is, I think, a communications director, and they basically have to work together to pass this green energy bill. And in The Boyfriend Candidate, she goes to this bar because she wants to have a one-night stand. She's never had one before, and she's very like shy, kind of reserved, so she wants to get out of her shell, and she ends up getting a hotel room with this man, and right as they're getting into it, the fire alarm goes off, and so he's like heroically carrying her out of this building, like shirt undone, and they get to the parking lot and everyone starts taking photos of them, and he is like, I'm so sorry but I have to go, and runs away. And she finds out the next day it's because he's running for governor, and so to save his reputation they start fake dating so it doesn't look as bad. And she's also a school librarian, so she started sort of campaigning with him and giving a platform to teachers and teachers' issues. So they're both very political. If you are like not into politics at all, you might not like them, but I think that stuff is interesting, and I don't personally think it's too much. And I think both couples in this series have a really good chemistry chemistry and I like them a lot. I like both of the love interests a lot as well. She writes great male love interests, and overall I think these are two really solid romance books that I never ever see people talking about. Next is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. Like Lynn Painter, Abby Jimenez is a very popular author, but I feel like this book specifically is underrated and I don't ever see people talking about it. It follows a travel YouTuber who has to go on a break because she gets custody of her newborn niece, and the love interest is her neighbor. He comes over at 3 in the morning because the baby is crying and helps her out, is like, you know, let me hold her, go take a shower, whatever. And then from there they become friends and he steps up. Like, he is down so bad for her in the best way. Like, he will literally do anything for her, and she has a lot of family stuff that she's dealing with, and a lot of this book honestly is pretty heavy. So if you're looking for something that is just like straight fluff, this is definitely not it. But I personally like that in my romances. I like to shed a tear or two. It's dual POV and I just loved both of the main characters a lot. I loved their dynamic and their relationship, and specifically how he treats her is just so good. Like, he's a lawyer, so he helps her a lot with her family stuff and taking care of the baby, and I just love a single parent romance too. And as you can probably tell from the title, they talk a lot about living life to the fullest and life being short. Her mom and her sister both died young, so she's also dealing with the trauma of that, also with the rest of her family, and now she has a kid, and it's a lot, but it's really, really good. And as much as I always see Abby Jimenez talked about, rightfully so, I'm a stan, I love her, I never see people talk about this one, and it makes me really sad because it's so good. The next one is The Charm Offensive by Allison Cochran. This is a male-male romance, and it's basically The Bachelor. They give it a different name, but it's The Bachelor, and the one main character, Charlie, is the bachelor of that season, and Dave, the other main character, is a producer and his handler. And basically Charlie is just not really cut out to be the bachelor. He has really bad anxiety and he hasn't really dated in the past, and it is just like not a good scenario for him. So Dave is staying with him and sort of coaching him through the show. So it's basically if the bachelor fell for a male producer, and I think it's a really fun and unique premise. I liked seeing them fly all around the world and the behind the scenes of the reality TV. Hi. We have a guest star. As much as this is a fun premise, they also talk a lot about mental health. Dave deals with depression and Charlie has anxiety and OCD. And it's so refreshing and beautiful to just see them accept each other. And I'm like, I can't talk because she's distracting me. What are you doing? Go to sleep. And this is just so beautiful, a fun romance, but also one of the best depictions of mental health I've read in a romance. Another popular author but an underrated book is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I feel like I don't ever see people talking about this book when they talk about Mariana Zapata, but it's one of my all-time favorites. When the main character, Aurora, was 12, her mom went on a hike and went missing, and they unfortunately never found her. And now it's years later and she is recently divorced, so she moves back to her hometown where she was living with her mom before she went missing to basically start over. And she rents a garage apartment and her landlord is a grumpy single dad. It's this small town in Colorado, and she gets a job in an outdoor store and she starts hiking to try and feel closer to her mom, and she just really needs a fresh start. And it's definitely like grumpy sunshine. He wants nothing to do with her at first, but then they sort of form a friendship and she forms a relationship with the teenage son. And I really like this book. I like the love interest a lot, Rhodes, but I really like her story and her as a main character and her journey. It definitely leans a little bit more just fiction to me than romance. I mean, it definitely is a romance, but it kind of reminds me of Emily Henry in that way, where some of her books, even though they are romances, I feel like the central point of the story is the female main character and what she's going through, and I really like that. And I love the setting. I'm not even like super outdoorsy, but I love reading about her just going on these hikes and living in this beautiful town in Colorado. It's perfect to read this time of year in spring and summer. It's also a very slow burn. Mariana Zapata is like the queen of slow burn. I don't even think he smiles at her until like 60% of the way through the book, but it is so good and just had me giggling and kicking my feet. Last but not least is the Bright Fall series by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a series of 3 interconnected standalones, and they're all female romances, and each one follows a different friend in this group of 3 friends, and they live in this small town in Washington. The first one is Delilah Green Doesn't Care. This one is like a light Cinderella retelling. Delilah is a photographer photographer, and she comes back to her hometown to be the photographer for her stepsister's wedding, estranged stepsister and stepmom who she doesn't really talk to. And the love interest in that one is the bride's best friend, who's a single mother. The second one is Ashley Parker Doesn't Fail, and spoiler alert, the wedding from the first book doesn't actually work out, and so now this is the evil stepsister character. She's an interior designer and she's renovating this house for like an HGTV type show, and the love interest is the carpenter working on the project. It's an enemies to lovers. They don't get along at first, so they're very different. And the third one is Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. She's another friend from the friend group, and she's a romance author, but she hasn't had much luck in romance in her real life, so she has writer's block. And her and the love interest have a really bad one-night stand, and they don't think they're ever going to see each other again, but then they run into each other because they're both doing the same play, and they end up fake dating. If I had to rank them, Delilah Green is definitely my favorite, then Iris Kelly, and then Ashley Parker. But I really enjoyed all of them. I really like the characters and the couples in each of them, and I think they all have a really fun premise. And again, just very underrated. I don't really ever see people talking about them. And female romances in general, we need to talk about more, because I feel like I can never find good recs when I'm looking for them. So if you're like me and you're in the market for a good female romance, definitely check this series out. Hopefully you found a new book from this video. Please comment your favorite underrated romance, because I'm always looking for more recommendations. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. If you want to find me anywhere else, I'll have all my socials linked down below. And thank you so much for watching.